I have been passionate about plain language since I first discovered it way back in 1995. And I just felt then that there was something really big about it. And I'm just so pleased to still be part of that movement and to see what's going on. Why do we have plain language? I think the real gist of it is that everybody has the right to understand the information they're presented, even us. So we should be active and we should be proactive in making sure that information we get, we understand. And at the conference that I mentioned, the Plain Conference in Austria, our president, Neil James, had done some research on what plain language can do to documents and what kind of advantages it can give them. And this is what he found out from research that had been done all over the globe. Plain language documents are 40% shorter. They take 50% less time to write, 50% fewer drafts, and 50% increase in customer satisfaction. So why aren't we all doing it? That's my question. So where in the world is plain language? Well, basically, it's just about everywhere. And I'm only getting the tip of the iceberg. But I just want to show you what some countries are doing, different organizations are doing, just so you get a sense that there's a lot we can do and it can be approached in different ways, and see what some of the successes are. Norway, I'm very excited about, and I didn't know much, I have to say, I didn't know much about Norway before I went to Austria, but I know now, and they are fantastic. They have taken a total government approach to this. The government is leading it, and I'm going to talk later about how important it is to have leaders on side. Every project they do is user tested, and they showed a video of their user testers out on the streets with an iPad, showing people information and getting their feedback. Just a fantastic, real holistic approach to plain language. Everybody's responsible. And one of the big laughs we had at the conference was the story about the minister in charge of plain language. She has a stamp on her desk, and if something comes across it that's not in plain language, she just stamps, "This needs plain language," and sends it back. There was a lot of people that said, "I got to get that stamp." But I think the fact that everybody's responsible is really, really important, and an important part of being successful. And they're hosting Plain 2019, and I'm so hoping to be there because I can certainly see myself standing by a fjord and thinking about plain language. Sweden has been at the forefront of plain language ever since I got involved, and they're now taking a new step forward into user experience. So I don't know if you are familiar with the term UX, but it stands for user experience. And it's become even more important as we go more into online communication. But one thing I really love about Sweden is they always have partnerships. They're always bringing people together within their own country and without. And so now the plain language consultants there and professionals are joining up with the user experience professionals, and they're teaming up to see how they can improve our user feedback, our audience research, and get the most out of that. So I'm very excited to see where that goes because I think it's an important part. Switzerland was new to the conference for me. I hadn't been with them before. Obviously, they've got some very global challenges when it comes to the financial services sector, and they're dealing with them. And they're also looking at trade laws that protect consumers. And I think the important thing there is they're coming at it from both angles, the people who lead the financial services industry and the consumers who have to operate in that sector. So I think that's important that they've got both angles, really. Austria itself has 1,000 laws they're addressing. 500 they've rewritten already in plain language, and they're going to keep going. These laws are ancient. Most of them have never been updated. There's words in there that don't even have the same meanings anymore. And, that really hit home to me because lots of words change meanings, and they don't have to be 200 years old to have a different meaning. So I think that's an important thing to remember, is it's not just how we present information, but it's those words and what they actually mean to our audience. And we don't want to make assumptions on that. So it was very exciting to be there, and it was nice to have met you and made that connection. Ireland had the 2015 conference, and they are also partnering up the government and particularly the National Adult Literacy Agency and really trying to push forward. So they're looking at public sector reforms, which just says to me, plain language fits in anywhere in the whole chain of communication and certainly citizens' information. They've created a plain English style guide for public servants, and most of the countries that we're talking about today have some kind of government guide for public servants to write to. But they're really excited because they're expecting some legislation that will put plain language into some form of law. So this is exciting because people are really making a big commitment to it. Portugal has been involved for a long time as well. And the company Claro there, you may have heard of Claro through Sandra Fisher-Martin. She did a fantastic TED Talk on the right to understand. It's quite old in terms of plain language, but it's still brilliant. And it's a great thing to start the conversation about plain language. It's also a great thing to just get you back on target. But the big thing they're doing right now is they did a pilot international research project on plain language, focusing on governments, agencies, and the public. And they presented those findings from the pilot project at the conference. And later this year, maybe early next year, they're going to launch this globally. And I'm really excited because I'm going to do the Canadian aspect of it. But it just really pulled together some key information that can help us sell plain language and help us know where to go with plain language. And they've also got a program called SimpleX, where they're trying to simplify government administration and communication. And again, it's interesting that they're not just targeting on one or the other, they're pulling those two things together. And that's a lot about what plain language is. It's about partnerships. You will hopefully not be working on your own. You should be striving to work in a team. Chile is our newest member, and that's really exciting. There's already some plain language activity in Argentina, but they're holding their first event. They presented an annual report. They've launched a website, and that's in Spanish. And from Plain's perspective, we're really excited. The conference in Austria was held in German and English. And we're just excited about that because we have been very English since we began. So this is really exciting. Australia, much like you see for Canada and New Zealand, the US, quite middle-driven. Organizations are doing their thing. They're pushing forward. Neil James's Plain English Foundation keeps it on the agenda. He does lots of training, lots of media. He's trying to get to as many organizations as he can. And Tasmania has a program called 2610, where they're trying to create a model where they can link plain language with literacy. And that's been an old and ongoing relationship, but it's an important one. And if literacy is an issue in your organization or community, then that might be a good place to target some energy. New Zealand government has a web toolkit, which is worth having a look at. The company Write gives out a plain language standard. They're looking at clarifying laws. So you're talking about a small country with a big plan, and I think that's just fantastic, really. And I just have to say, I really like the people at Write because they're very aggressive. When they go into a company, they say, okay, let's look at how much it's costing you to write the way you're writing now. And they take hour times, salary times, document times, how long it takes to get it finished. And usually the results are quite shocking. And as we saw in the earlier slide, plain language can save you a lot of time. So if you're brave, give it a try and see what that nets you. The USA, of course, had the Plain Language Act, and then they made it law in 2010. Certain government agencies have to communicate to the public in plain language. And that was the inspiration for International Plain Language Day, because on that day, October 13th, that's when it became law. And so that was Cheryl's baby, and together we launched it. And I'm very excited to say that the Plain organization is going to take that under their wing, and that's going to be fantastic because Cheryl and I started Plain, and then we handed it over, and it became a much bigger, stronger organization, and now they'll have International Plain Language Day as well as all their other services. So that's fantastic. But again, in the US and like Canada, very much sector-oriented. So our federal government has guidelines, and all the government guidelines for plain language in most countries are available to the public online, and they do fantastic research, excellent shares. It's just a great way to get some resources to help you. The healthcare field is really trying hard, again, sector by sector, because they see the value of plain language in terms of people's care. And the legal and justice system are trying to broaden clear communication as well. So it's happening. It's just not like some countries where there's a particular central focus. It's just going on all over the place. So I like to, when I first talk to people about plain language, is say, learn and lead. See what you can learn about it and then become a leader in it. And as you can see from the countries we talked about, it's really, really important that organizational leaders are behind it. And they need to be educated. They don't all know what it's all about. They need to be motivated. There has to be something in there for them. And then you have to have their commitment. And we need that kind of support to be successful. And it breaks my heart when I hear somebody say, oh, I tried a plain language project in my organization, but the bosses didn't really want it, and we have a system, and that really, I really feel bad, because then the blame is like, okay, plain language doesn't work. No, plain language works, but there's a process that has to be implemented, and this getting leaders support is so important. And honestly, some places, especially countries, will spend ages, sometimes years, to get that built up and then use it. And we will always have to sell the benefits of plain language. I think that's not going to go away. I think it's much easier now because we've got some fantastic research out there, much more than when I started, for sure. And we know that it's a great customer service. We know that it brings satisfaction inside and outside an organization. If you've created a plain language document or run a project, you'll know that satisfaction. I've seen it. I love the look of it when somebody says, oh my goodness, I can really do this. This is great. It helps us be safe, particularly in the medical field. And if you're introducing a product or service, it's just a good way to make sure that we are helping the people that we're serving. And it offers savings to companies. So once you make that investment, do the training, get your guidelines, you have no reason to not be enjoying great benefits from plain language. Oops, I think I lost it. So to be a learner, you're doing it right now, and of course you've had other workshops and you're getting more. That's really important. It's also important to share your knowledge, because people need to understand plain language. And some people come to it with oh, I've always done it this way, or people know what I'm saying, or oh, it's just dumbing things down. We want actual proof that those things are not true and help people understand the benefits of it. So having a style guides, there's excellent books out there, there's videos, training. It's really important. If you're a learner, share the learning. That really helps. And a few years ago, I started writing training right into my plain language proposals. And I found that very helpful, and so have my clients. Be a leader. Get it on your organization's agenda. And make sure that when management are having meetings, that plain language is being talked about as its own category. What's happening in our organization? What's going on? What can we do to keep that energy going? If you do a project, try to include as many people as you can, especially anybody who touches that document or is involved in that document from the beginning right through to the end of dealing with customers. And collaborate to integrate. That's so important. Don't discredit the information and the advantage of having anybody on your team. Everybody has got some way to contribute to plain language. Now, the most important words ever said to me about plain language were, plain language is a process. And that really got me out of my little narrow view that it was writing and editing, or just testing for a grade level, which is so 80s and 90s. So it's really important to start out by defining the plain language goals of your particular project and getting everybody on side and making sure people all have the same concept and same desire. That's really important, because along the way, you're going to have to use that to keep people on target. Know your audience. Spend as much time as you can to understand your audience. Look at user testing. Look at doing personal interviews and just getting to know them. It's very important. And Cheryl's designed a course called Audience Awareness for the Plain Language Academy, and I found it really helpful myself. Use a plain language style guide or integrate it into your existing style guide for some consistency in the writing and editing. Again, that consistency can really take you a long way. And make clear design a priority. And one of the presentations from the conference was on design. by Flora Gordon, who teaches for the Academy as well. And she's great because she also understands the whole writing thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And do testing and also presentation from Iva Chung. I'll be sharing some of the points. Don't be afraid to test. If you don't understand it, there's tons of materials out there to help you. And again, there's lots of myths about testing, that it costs lots of money, it takes too much time, but it doesn't, and the information you get is absolutely invaluable. You want that audience involved from start to finish, not just at the end.